No, we don't have anything that is hard and fast that cannot be disputed.
You have written that the further, and you've even spoken on the show about it, that the further down you dig, the more advanced technology you find. That we would think that the further back you go, we have a tendency to think the more ancient, the more primitive. The more primitive, the less technologically savvy. But you've indicated that you found the exact opposite to be true. The further down you go, the further back you go. The further back you go, the higher the technology. Can you touch on that at all?
Yes, certainly. Well, let's take a few examples. And this is a rule, worldwide rule, and archaeologists generally understand that this is a fact today. It goes against the evolutionary theory once again. Take Egypt, for example. There is no evidence of a primitive Egypt past, leading up progressively to a civilized Egypt. Where you go back the furthest in Egypt, everything is more sophisticated. The biggest structures were built by the smallest populations in the earliest times of Egypt's history. The earliest jewellery is on the lower levels. The best jewellery and all later jewellery is clumsy imitations. At the lower levels and the earlier times, you find, for example, a paved road system, which is very sophisticated. You have even the social systems, a court system that has all the evidence of precedence and form, and a medical system similar. And as you come up to the higher levels, you find that it deteriorated and was simply a clumsy imitation of what went before. We go away from Egypt, we go to the Sumerians, and the lowest levels show that Sumerius also sprang up suddenly at the top, not at the bottom, and that the later levels were simply imitations that didn't match the earlier ones. And we could keep going around the world and find the same thing.
So what conclusions can you draw from those archaeological facts?
Well, my conclusion would be this, that they started superior and then they went to inferior. There must have been a mother civilization, shall we call it an ex-civilization, that bequeathed its knowledge to these new civilizations that sprung up suddenly in different parts of the world. And this would, of course, be true if there had been a disaster that wiped out a great civilization and then the survivors had started with knowledge that had been bequeathed to them. All it would take would be enough people, again, to form a culture with the knowledge already waiting, that they could put it into practice immediately, and they wouldn't have to develop it from scratch.
In your book, The Forbidden Secret, you offer $100,000 to anyone who can disprove the thesis presented in the book. Okay, in about 45 seconds, could you encapsulate the thesis for us?
The thesis is this, that this planet has been hijacked. We have lost contact with our Creator. We've turned our back on Him. We're in a tremendous mess. We can't get ourselves out of it. But our Creator, in His wonderful love and mercy, does not want to turn His back on us. He has found a way by which we can be rescued. And so He sent His Son down to this earth. He took the penalty for us, so that the penalty being death, and He offers now power to overcome, so that we don't mess up a second time. And that is the rescue plan.
My guest is scriptural archaeologist Jonathan Gray. His website is www.beforeus. That's BEFOREUS. Beforeus.com. You are offering $100,000 to anyone who can disprove the thesis in the book. I'm not even going to try for that $100,000 because I tend to share your view. But I had to interrupt you in the middle of explaining it. Can you pick up where you left off?
But my question, first of all, would be, if a credible, trustworthy, and all-powerful world figure were to show you a foolproof strategy guaranteed to end the current violence, corruption, and misery, would you be interested? I think most of us would be. Now, if he had also cracked the secret to life extension beyond your wildest dreams, with pain-free, productive, enjoyable living, what would that be worth to you? Well, not only is such a rescue program currently underway, but the hijackers of our planet know it. And they and their globalist puppets are determined, if possible, to sabotage the operation and also to stop us learning about it. That's why I've called this the Forbidden Secret. It's a divine rescue program for each one of us. And if someone doesn't know, it's so explosive that when common people discover it, they become ignited, invincible, and unafraid of what's coming in the future. And of course, that's what the globalist villains don't want, an informed, empowered, and fearless population. They're obsessed with you and I becoming subdued and slumbering and submissive to them so that they can more easily execute their dark plans. So it's called Forbidden Secret because the secret is the secret of eternal life, the secret of putting all our troubles in the past for a better future, and they want to keep it secret.
According to the Forbidden Secret, DNA and other evidence indicates that the theory of evolution is simply wrong. Can you explain that?
Yes, absolutely. There's so much in the theory of evolution that now we've got genetics to deal with. If Darwin had access to the information about genetics we have today, I doubt whether his evolutionary theory would have got off the ground. And I like to ask different questions. How did, for one thing, DNA information code evolve? And how did the code to translate it originate separately at the very same time? Because the information code in DNA is the information for life. It's information that is programmed into every one of our body cells in a more intricate way than the information is programmed into our computers. And if anyone was to tell you that the information in my computer or your computer just got there and no human being was responsible for it, you'd laugh them out of town. Well, I'm saying here is that in everybody's cells, we've got 3 trillion cells in our bodies on average, all of us. And each one of those cells has the information which is greater in complexity than all of the functions going on in New York City today. I'm not talking on the top of my head on this. This has been actually stated by reputable scientists. New York City, with all its complex transport systems, and you could take any city in the world, with its information systems, with its food supplies, with its hardware and software shops, and with everything it contains, is less complex than one human cell. Now, don't tell me that New York City just appeared and no humans or no intelligence was involved. And no one's going to convince me that the cells of our body were likewise just got there. The beginning of information, the existence of information, scientifically speaking, is only possible by intelligent input from creative intelligence. And this is what I'm saying, that the existence of the human cell is just one aspect of this evolution problem that evolution has no answer for, because it doesn't come by evolution, it couldn't.
And I want to remind people, evolution is only a theory. It's not a theory. That means not an accepted scientific fact. It's a theory. People tend to forget that. You suggest, Jonathan, that there is evidence to support the allegations that weather, earthquakes, and the spread of disease are being manipulated. By whom and for what purposes?
Yes. Well, certainly there is manipulation going on, Brent. I have no doubt about that. And I guess I'm in the company of many scientists who agree with this. And we point the finger at people who are wanting to rule the world, and to do this they have to provoke disasters, and then you might say that they provoke the disaster and then they say, we have a solution for you. And so they engineer the problem, and then they bring in their solution. And hopefully, by a series of these events, they will eventually have access to the power that they need to rule everyone upon Earth. That's the plan of the globalist organizations.
I can't argue with that, actually. Everything that I've studied suggests that that is exactly the case. Now, you touched on this a moment ago. There's an ongoing rescue operation to restore the Earth to its pristine state. In your book, you also say the name of the rescuer is known. Are we, just for the record, are we talking about Yeshua, Jesus, or are you referring to someone more temporal when you mention that in the book?
I'm referring to Yeshua, Jesus himself, yes.
Okay, good.
And not only do we call him that today, but that name was known thousands of years before he came. In other words, he just didn't suddenly appear and say, I'm here. Prophecies foretold his coming. In fact, even in the Old Testament of the Bible, there are more than 300 prophecies that progressively built up a picture of him before he arrived so that he could be recognized when he came. And not only that, but his name was included in that.
And a lot of that is in the book of Isaiah, which is very Old Testament, absolutely.
Yes.
In Professor Carl Baugh's Creation in Symphony series, he presents compelling evidence that humans walked with dinosaurs. In your book, The Forbidden Secret, you state that scientists were caught destroying evidence of this same fact. Who, when, and how?
Well, that's a very interesting one. Now, the dinosaur evidence to which I'm referring, actually, is evidence that is found in Glen Rose in Texas, USA. Dr. Carl Baugh actually has his museum across there, a very fine museum with a lot of interesting evidence of the past. And near there was a river called the Paluxy River. And the dinosaur evidence actually was found in a riverbed, an old riverbed. And when it was discovered, there were people who announced it to the press and to scientists and invited them to come along and assess it. And the press came immediately, and the scientists didn't come for about 12 months, the first evolutionary scientists, and then they said, oh, this is just eroded nonsense, which of course it had been eroded over 12 months because it had been exposed all that time. But then it was uncovered, the ground was uncovered where nothing had ever been before. They kept on digging. There was actually two sets of tracks. There was human tracks and there was dinosaur tracks, all on the same level. In fact, one of the dinosaur footprints had a human footprint crossing over inside it. And the tracks continued under undisturbed bank. They dug away the bank and found that the tracks continued. And as they did so, it became evident that humans and dinosaurs had been walking on the same level at the time when these tracks were soft mud, which later on hardened to what shall we say, to rock. Yeah. Now, a fellow who was around there, I'm just trying to think of his name. I could get it for you. Gave a lecture, and he actually, and I can give you the date. The name of the date eludes me for a moment, Brent, because you just caught me a little bit there. But I know the whole story. I was over there shortly after this happened, and he was lecturing, and he gave this evidence. And sitting in the audience, there were a couple of guys, two well-known scientists actually, with the evolutionary bias. And one of them particularly looked very, very disturbed. Later on that day, these two men were seen in the Paluxy River with these tracks with a hammer and a mallet, and they were doing their best to destroy the track.
Oh,
and this is the kind of thing that goes on quite a lot.
By the way, folks, I have photographs of what Jonathan Gray is describing right now, that whole region, and of some of these finds. I actually have a series of photographs of these, so I know what he's talking about, just in case you're wondering at the veracity of this. But now, is that a crime? I mean, it should be. But is that a crime for scientists to do something like that, to destroy that kind of evidence? Is that actionable in any sense?
It is a crime because this history belongs to mankind, and what they're doing is they're stealing from mankind a history of his past. Oh, I've just recalled who this fellow was. The speaker was Tom Patton, and he was up in Dayton, Tennessee. And it was in 1989. In fact, I'll give you the date, August the 12th, 1989. And these two guys who were in the audience, they flew down to Dallas the next morning. They drove out to the Paluxy River, and that afternoon, with their tools, they were doing their damage to the Prince. And the Prince, when they left, was found to be greatly damaged. But of course, they didn't wipe out the evidence because there's a lot more of those tracks that they didn't get to.
Well, and I understand what you're saying. It is a crime against humanity and against mankind, and I understand that. But is it actually what they did and what they were caught doing, is that something they could be prosecuted for in our current system?
I don't know whether there's any laws that would cover you knocking about something in a riverbed, unless it was a protected property by law.
Boy, there should be, and there should be. That's like erasing a piece of history. I consider all of these things like time capsules. I mean, fascinating to take a look into the past and have somebody destroy that. That to me is an abomination.
I agree with you.
What one piece of information, if I say to you, what's most important for people to know out of all the things that you have learned through your work, what would you say it is?
I would say that without life, we don't have anything. And if there was a secret to living on forever and not having to cope with sadness and death and loneliness and pain, that would be the greatest thing we could ever wish for. And this is why I wrote The Forbidden Secret, because there are people out there, and that includes all of us, I guess. We long for a better world. We long for a better life. And here is someone, he loves us enough that he provides a way for us to achieve this and to receive it. And all we have to do is to accept it and then accept his power, and we can be part of that new life.
How can people learn more about your work, and how do they get a hold of your books?
Yes, it would include that as well.
And does that also include the What the Globalists Fear, which is Jonathan wrote a book called What the Globalists Fear, which is fascinating. It will show you absolute empirical scientific proof of the veracity of the Book of Genesis. Did I get the name of the book right?
Yes, you have. The Weapon the Globalists Fear. And
is that also, can they also find that on that website?
Yes, they can. I consider that book, The Weapon the Globalists Fear, and The Forbidden Secret as two of the most important projects I've ever undertaken in all my 40 or so years of archaeological history.
Fantastic. Jonathan,
the book, The Weapon the Globalists Fear, is the answer to the evolution theory, is the answer to all of the problems today which attack Christianity.
We're out of time. Jonathan Gray has been my guest. www.beforeus.com. Beforeus.com. Get there, folks. We got to take a break.